Hello everyone, Floppy Waffle 69 here, and welcome back to the channel, guys. Hey, sorry, this one's a little bit delayed. I should have done this a couple weeks ago, but sorry, I have been super busy and been trying to trickle out content the best I possibly can. This is going to be a full review of the Tier 10 Pan-Asian Destroyer. This is the Lushun. This is currently the Dockyard ship you can obtain as of our current update. What is it? 14.10, I believe. I believe it started in 14.9, and we'll run through the remainder of this update until Christmas, till we get our new Dockyard, which is like the Roussillon or some French battleship like that. But the Lushun already was a Dockyard, and it has come back in the version or variant of the Lushun B. And it is my job here to showcase and talk a little bit about this ship, and at the end of the day, decide whether or not if it is worth picking up. This will cost you 6,750 doubloons at a minimum to finish the last 5 phases, which must be purchased to obtain her. So a tier 10 special ship costing around 6,750 doubloons actually isn't that bad of a deal. So that alone, if the price is already enticing for you, then absolutely go ahead and pick this ship up. But if you don't want to wait for the grind or simply don't have time and it's going to cost you a little bit more than that, then obviously it's my job to tell you whether or not you should go for it or not. And let's go on and get into the video. So first things first, what I like to do with these ship analysis videos is I go ahead in the port screen. I like to talk a little bit about her, and I like to also go over her hard statistics. Then I will follow up with the gameplay, and I will showcase what she can do in action in the current meta in a randoms battle, talk a little bit about her some more, and then give you my final thoughts. So without further ado, let's go on into it. So looking firstly at the armor layout, obviously this is a standard armor layout. Our destroyer build at tier 10, coated in 19 millimeters of effective armor. So there is nothing improved on the armor scheme of this ship. Moving on into the, my mouse can cooperate, there we go. The survivability of this ship base, we are getting 20,500 out of the HP pool. Obviously, this isn't the only HP you can have. Obviously, you can select the flag, and you have a heavy repair teams. And I will talk about that a little bit more as we get later on in this video, but no, you do have a heal. Going into the main battery of the Lushun, and as you can see, this is a 2x2 130 millimeter gunned destroyer. These guns are reloading in 1.7 seconds and have a 180-degree turn time of around 10 seconds with a maximum range of not 14.8. I believe it's around 12 point something. The reason it's 14.8 is because I have it built for range in that 6th slot instead of the DPM, and I will explain that later on in the video as well. Moving into the HE is 1400 damage with a 5% fire chance, penning 22 millimeters of armor with initial velocity coming out of the barrel at 950 meters, and sharing that 950 meters a second initial velocity is the armor piercing, and which will be doing a 2200 maximum damage. Going into the we'll talk a little bit more about the HE shells. Because of the reload mixed with how the rate of fire, you're averaging around 7.1 fires a minute. There is no also with the AP, there's no improved ricochet angles or anything like that. It is just your standard 130 millimeter armor piercing. Now, at first glance, when you look at this ship, you should see a lot of similarities between 2 other ships in the game. The most notably being the one I believe that is for Cole, which is the Nustrashimi. Literally identical hull. Really nothing has changed in that regard. And again, for the tech tree counterpart, we have the Grozavoy. Obviously, the Grozavoy has a slightly different turret loadout, as we have a 1 and 2 turret at the front with a 3rd on the rear. This just has a 1 and 2. One nose, one in the ass. Obviously, this makes gunfighting a little bit easier to go nose in or kite out, but your angles are actually pretty good. So I really didn't find it too hard to utilize all 4 of my guns at any given time. Moving on to the torpedoes, these are deep water torpedoes. I need to state that right out the beginning. These are not your normal torpedoes. These deep water torpedoes are like that of the Yu Yang, will only hit cruisers, battleships, and aircraft carriers. They have a maximum range of 11 kilometers and can deal quite a hefty punch here at 17,900 with a speed of 65 knots and a detectability range of 0.8 kilometers. The reaction time of these torpedoes is incredibly low, given the fact that they are deep water torpedoes. They will spawn right on the enemy ship, giving them around 4.6 time of reaction. If that. That's just on an average. Most of the time when you see these torpedoes, if you haven't seen them from hydroacoustic search and they're coming in on your broadside, you are going to be taking 2, potentially 3 torpedoes at a time, which can be the difference between life or death depending on what ship you are playing as and how good your torpedo protection bulges are. Moving on into the really not, okay, I'll mention this briefly. Depth charges, it has it. Really not noticeable. You will shoot down a couple planes here and there, but you are basically fodder for the aircraft carrier. And coupled with not having access to a smoke screen generator, smoke screen generator, it's going to be crucial you plan your maneuvers ahead and accordingly, because all an aircraft carrier player has to do is fly over top of you and keep you illuminated for the enemy. Eventually you will shoot down planes, so I don't recommend you do that as an aircraft carrier player, but the initial strike or two, you will fly over the ship and it really won't do much to you, and it is not really a big threat to you in regards of your airplanes. Going into the maneuverability of the ship, we are packing 36 knots, which again that's not bad, but again, we don't have access to speed boost, so it is what it is. You get what you get. Only thing that can make the ship faster is your Sierra Mike flag, pumping us up to what, 37 point something, I believe. Turning circle radius of 700 meters and a rudder shift time of 4.6 seconds. The DD doesn't have the best turning circle radius. The rudder shift time of 4.6 seconds is kind of mad. It's not good, but not bad either. It's definitely usable. Just make sure you plan out your maneuvers before you do them. Make sure you know where the torpedo threats are. And again, you have a hydroacoustic search consumable, so that should mitigate that problem for you. The hydroacoustic search consumable I will talk more about when we go over the consumable list here in just a few short moments. Going into the concealment value of the ship, I believe standard, this ship comes with a 7.16 kilometer detection. Of course, with the concealment module mounted on your ship, you get it down to 6.4, and then with the concealment build or concealment expert skill, you get it down to around 5.8, I believe, which again is awesome. That is pretty damn good stealth for this ship, especially with how you want to be playing the ship. It's definitely going to need that detection or that low detectability too, as the ship can creep up on enemy DDs and dish out a whole lot of pain in a short amount of time, as you saw from the reload. The only big thing that draws this ship back is the fact that it has only 4 gun barrels. Yes, they reload relatively quickly, but if you knock one of your turrets out, you immediately cut your DPM in half, which is obviously pretty painful. I believe your DPM on the ship to talk about is your AP is around 310,000. And your HE DPM is around 197,000. In regards of comparing that to other ships and other DPM in the game, of course, the Haragumo, Marceau are both going to be beating you out on that regard, and then your HE DPM is going to beat you with a boatload of ships, with the Marceau being at the top. So you're right there with your AP DPM, but your HE DPM, you go more towards the middle of the pack. Now, that is interesting about the armor-piercing DPM. These are Soviet 130 millimeter guns, so definitely want to make use of broadside targets with your cruisers and your battleships. You can absolutely punish with the armor piercing, which I will go ahead and showcase in the video review, or sorry, the replay review. There are some times, I believe I did it to a broadside Nakhimov and a battleship at the same time. You can definitely make use of this armor piercing, and you should make use of this armor piercing when playing the Lushun. So guys, that's basically the Lushun from my port side analysis. There really isn't too much to talk about her in regards of her raw statistics. This is a gunboat through and through. I do like to play her 2 ways. One, I do like to play a DD Hunter. I think the ship really does excel at nullifying and pushing enemy destroyers. And at the same time, a back range HE spammer kiter towards other ships. You like to go and depending on the flank and the way the enemy deployment is shown to you, you really can make use of both. Obviously, dumping your deep water torpedoes from stealth. If you get a hit, get a flood, that's great. They damage control it, and then go ahead and open up with your main battery guns with your HE, and you can go ahead and set fires for sure. This is a great little DD, a scary little DD at that. But personally for me, and this is just my opinion on the ship, she's definitely good. And I think for 6,750 doubloons, she's actually not a bad pickup if you're looking for that. The second you're spending over 8 to 10,000 dubs for this ship, I really wouldn't recommend it at that point because I think there's going to be other DDs that you can just get for free or in the Armory or the Research Bureau or for Steel that are going to offer more fun playstyles plus more competitive playstyles. Now, don't get me wrong, like I said, this ship is good, but for me, I want to play something else usually. Um, I usually play this ship solo when I want to pay back to the battleships in regards of HE spamming, but then again, I can find other ships that can fulfill that role too. It's kind of a mixed bag of what the ships bring, what the ship can bring to the battlefield. But again, if you're looking at spending anything over 10,000 dubs for this ship, I really would be like, ugh, I probably wouldn't recommend it in that regard. But that being said, this is a good little boat. Now, going over the upgrades I have mounted on the ship. Obviously, I've main armaments modification 1 with the hydroacoustic search modification 1 upgrade in that second slot. I go ahead and take aiming systems modification 1 in the third slot because you only have 4 guns. I want to make sure that I am having my shells land actually where I'm aiming and not going off and hitting the water, though that does tend to happen. I don't know what it is with the Soviet 130s, but the dispersion one salvo seems pretty good. The next one seems kind of meh. I mean, your horizontal dispersion, let's say at a range of 10 kilometers, which again is a relatively, you know, realistic range that you'll be opening up on enemy ships. You're getting about a 90 meter horizontal dispersion with a vertical dispersion of 50 meters with a sigma of 2.0. Again, pretty standard, nothing improved here, so keep that in mind. In that fourth slot, I am taking the propulsion modification 1. I want to make sure I can start and stop on a dime. And if I want to park behind an island or an allied smoke screen, I can do that and go to full speed in half the amount of time. Obviously, in the fifth slot, I am mounting Concealment Systems Modification 1 for obvious reasons. Get my detection as low as possible so I can get the pounce on enemy destroyers and kind of catch them off guard with my Hydroacoustic Search. And then in the sixth slot, I am actually taking Gunfire Control Systems Modification 2 because the build I am running, if I instead I'm basically opting out of the range on this ship, which is 14.8 kilometers, and I'm sticking around the 12 point whatever kilometer range. And that is a little bit more painful in order to gun, like Burgones and battleships like that, especially battleships that have scary HE and or cruisers. I want to make sure I maintain my distance, make sure that I can juke them with my rudder and my engine and throw off their shots while making sure I'm dishing out the pain downrange. I'm not saying stay at 14 point whatever kilometers the entire game. That's definitely not how you play this thing, but depending on if it's a heavy enemy push and I can get away with it or sitting behind an island just farming over top of it, absolutely. This allows a little bit more flexibility. Because if you mount the the main battery modification 3, not only making your turret traverse a little bit slower, which really doesn't matter, but your main battery reload time is only 12%. So realistically speaking, you're only going down to like what, 1.7 to like 1.5, 1.6. You're not really gaining that much more DPM, and especially if you're taking the last stand skill, or sorry, not last stand, fearless brawler skill. I'm already going to be buffing that regardless, especially if I'm at 14.8 kilometers and I'm detected. That means it's going to be buffing that as well, rather than wasting an upgrade slot on that and having to sacrifice the range that I'm getting through my range modification here. Even though the game does recommend you take main battery mod 3, I just find it to be more flexible utilizing the gunfire control systems modification 2. Now, if you disagree with me, that's fine. If you're all in the DPM, I 100%, I can see where you're coming from. But for me, 1.7 is pretty damn fast. Again, with the fearless brawler skill, I just want that extra range. And depending on my captain skill that I'm already running, I really don't want to sacrifice that range. And I don't want to spend the 4 points on my captain build that I'm already utilizing on getting that advanced firing training, whatever that skill's called. So. But yeah, guys, that is the Lushun. I'll talk a little about the commander build while we are looking at the replay. So without further ado, let's go on into that replay and check it out. Alrighty, guys, and here we are in battle with our Lushun, and I will go ahead and pop up the upgrades and the commander build as a little bit of a refresher to kind of show you or to remind you what I am slotting on this vessel. Obviously, I already mentioned it in the port side of the video that I am actually taking in that 6th upgrade slot the range mod rather than the reload, and that is just because the commander build that I'm using actually works out a lot, and I'd much rather invest those captain points in something else rather than that AFT or whatever that skill is called that extends the main battery range. Just my opinion. Obviously, you could do the exact opposite if that's something you feel, but just keep in mind that you're going to have to rearrange your captain points accordingly in order to get exactly what you want to have on this vessel. One thing I forgot to mention about the Lushun, because one of the biggest downsides of the Lushun is that it only has 4 guns with really no improved dispersion values. And I do find that the Soviet 130s tend to have kind of wonky dispersion with every other salvo. One salvo you'll have pretty damn good dispersion, and the next salvo you'll have kind of like, where's that shell going dispersion. But one thing that does kind of compensate for this is the main battery turrets are 360-degree turrets. This allows a little bit more flexibility and allows you to keep all 4 gun barrels on target at a single point in time, rather than having to wait for that turret to traverse a whole 180 degrees in order to get that on target. So theoretically speaking, you can kite and keep both your turrets on target at the same time, which is very nice and super flexible. Another downside to the Lushun that I find, besides her kind of mediocre handling, that's just in my opinion, is she actually is a fairly long destroyer. She doesn't sit too high on the waterline, but again, it's not like anything too low like the Jaeger. But she is quite long, so she is a fairly easier target to hit the closer and closer she gets in range of ships. That's why I kind of like to play my Lushun, especially when I'm open water kiting, kind of towards the 12, 13, 14 kilometer range, as it allows a smaller target and I can utilize my engine juking and rudder juking to my advantage, while just having the sea of HE rain down on my opponents, which every battleship and or stationary cruiser knows is incredibly frustrating because I don't have a citadel, and armor piercing from battleships only does 10% of the main shell damage, which again is incredibly frustrating for them. So again, utilize that to your advantage when you're playing this ship. Now, some other things that I have to mention about the Lushun is indeed this heavy repair teams consumable. This isn't like an ordinary consumable over heal, which you pop it lasts for 28 seconds or whatever, and you do your get your healing back of whatever it's going to be between 8 and 10k, whatever it is. The heavy repair teams basically operates in the version of it's a long-lasting heal that heals smaller amounts of HP back, but it lasts almost twice as long. So it's going to allow you to regain health in a given period of time rather than that short burst when you need it before you die, so to speak, like a super heal, for example, which really can get you out of those tight situations. This isn't that kind of heal. What I usually do with a heal like this is, even when I take smaller amounts of damage, I will go ahead and pop this heal because it gradually heals back over time, like you see right here behind you, and it'll get me back to where I want to be. Now, granted, I didn't need to heal right there. A lot of people would consider that a misplay, and where I do agree with that decision, but I wanted to highlight that I like to pop this heal a little bit earlier than later, just because it allows me to regain that HP that I need in order to win those certain engagements. One thing about the Lushun that I find is the ship is really good at not dying if it's played correctly, regards with your damage control party, your repair party, and your positioning. You have to really pick and choose your engagements and know, hey, I can definitely open water gunboat in this situation, or hey, there's 2 Colberts in a Smolensk and a gunboat DD right in front of me. It's probably not the time to open up my main battery and dish out as much pain as possible. So definitely target selection and knowing when to open up and when not to, and when to stay dark, is definitely a huge concern when it comes to playing the ship and playing it right. I do find that the torpedoes on this vessel are actually pretty damn impactful and can do quite a bit of damage if they are if you land quite a bit of them on target. So make sure that you definitely utilize your torpedoes and compensate with your guns in order to min-max your flooding and fire damage with this thing, because it definitely can rack up the damage if executed correctly. And lastly, one thing I really didn't touch about in the port screen is the AA. I briefly maybe mentioned it. Again, you don't have defensive AA, and your AA is kind of mediocre at best. You will shoot down planes, don't get me wrong. It's definitely better than some destroyers out there. But again, it's not going to win any awards just because you don't have that to compensate with the flak count, and you don't have to compensate that with the defensive AA fire consumable. So realistically speaking, you're relying on dodging strikes and hoping that no one's shooting you while you're plane spotted, which is, again, everyone's favorite mechanic, which is the plane spotting mechanic. All right, so now that that's all over with and I've talked about it, I'm gonna go back to the consumables just a little bit. Because one thing, again, that really limits the ability of the ship is the lack of speed boost, and also that she's only topping out at, what, 36 something knots, so with the Sierra Micro, maybe 37 point something knot speed. It's really a downside mixed with the size of the ship. So again, you're going to need to min-max your heal and your consumables to make sure that you're taking minimal amounts of damage and you're making sure that you're having enough HP in the tank, so to speak, that can allow you to trade effectively with enemy destroyers and enemy surface ships. Here's a good example of getting a great torpedo spread on the Libertad. Gonna go ahead and land probably, what, 1 or 2 more torpedoes on the vessel, and then I'm gonna open up with my main battery guns while signifying to the team to shoot this target. I don't know why I didn't get a flood. I'm probably because his damage control party might have already been up. I'm not 100% sure. But hey, you know what? At the end of the day, that 20,000-30,000 damage that I racked up with, what, 4 torpedo hits is more than enough to swing the engagement in my team's favor. Of course, all I'm indirectly doing, though, is buffing the Libertad's F key, which I think is absolute horseshit on that ship. So make sure that we play around that as his secondaries are shooting at my vessel at, what, 13 to 14 kilometers. Always nice to see. So... again, another thing about the Lushun that allows her to have great cap contesting abilities and really allows her the flexibility to fight and engage enemy destroyers is that Pan-Asian hydroacoustic search. Now, whereas equal tier German ships will usually have around 5 kilometer hydro, this ship actually gets the 5.5 kilometer hydro, similar to that of the Luoyang down at tier 8, which allows you that 500 extra meters of I guess, early advancement to know when to open up and get that extra damage, chip damage in on the enemy destroyer that potentially is unaware that you're there, as it is concealed within its smoke screen. Also, this is great to have in order to dodge enemy torpedoes and, of course, spot enemy submersibles that are within that radius as well. Obviously, I'm not going to go ahead and recommend that this ship go ahead and hunt enemy submarines, as you are pretty damn slow. You have ship-based ASW, you have no speed boost to go and run them down, and you are a fairly large surface destroyer that doesn't handle particularly well, making you an easy target for the torpedoes that the submarine will inevitably launching at you, plus just keeping you spotted on periscope depth, which again is every destroyer's bane, and or having the aircraft carrier just hover over your ship, keeping you spotted for the rest of the enemy team to fire at you. So keep that in mind too. But the hydroacoustic search is nice. It is allowing your ship to be just slightly more aggressive and a little bit more flexible. Now, I did mention previously in the port analysis portion of this video that the armor piercing, or the AP DPM, is, I believe, top 3, maybe top 5. I can't really remember. I think it's top 3 in regards of all tier 10 destroyers in this game. So you definitely want to min-max with your armor piercing to do those massive chunk damaging shots, and don't just sit with HE. I think a really big thing that I fucked up on when I was earlier on in my World of Warships playing, I don't know if you want to call it a career, but just playing years, was I never really switched and utilized armor piercing on destroyers. And I think that's a really big mistake on your part if you're not doing that, especially if you know where to aim. And where you want to aim is kind of on that upper deck, right where that deck meets with the superstructure. You want to aim and kind of penetrate there, as you will get those 1,500 to 3,000, 4,000 damage salvos, obviously depending on the shell count and the amount of alpha strike you have on your armor piercing. Plus, the ship fires so fast that your AP DPM will rack up and the damage will rack up indirectly. And a lot of ships kind of don't pay you the amount of respect that needs to be paid to this ship's AP DPM. So you're going to see an example here of an infamous cruiser that is known for not only burning down every ship within its wake, but also shooting down or burning alive destroyers, which is the Soviet Tier 10 Smolensk. I'm actually going to pick this engagement with him because I'm going to bait him with my HE. He thinks, hey, I'm going to flat broadside to the guy and utilize all 16 of my 130s. Well, guess what? I'm going to then switch to the armor piercing, aim right for that upper water line, midsection, and I'm going to chunk him out while popping my heal, of course, and I'm actually going to win this engagement. Now, granted, he wasn't full HP, and that is exactly why I took full advantage of that, knowing that we needed to eliminate this ship. Because it allows our carrier a little bit more flexibility on the D flank as well, so he doesn't have to worry about those nasty flak puffs that the Swans can pop out. Again, you just have to understand the situation and know when to open up and when not to. And I figured I had the HP stored up in the tank that I could go ahead and effectively trade with the Smolensk. I was at the right ranges. I believe I was out around, what, 11 to 13 kilometers, somewhere around there, that I can effectively trade while I'm making sure that I'm dodging the vast majority of his shells. And even if I wasn't dodging the vast majority of his shells, I know I could take a little bit of a battering in order to trade and get that Smolensk off the board. Again, these are all things you have to weigh as a commander, and this stuff will come to you easier and easier the more you play the game, learning the certain ships, and knowing, obviously I hate to say this, but it's true, spotting when a player knows what they're doing, rather a player that doesn't know what they're doing, kind of thing. So you have to prey upon that as well. Sadly, it is the case, but again, use it to your advantage, guys. Use it to your advantage and sway the combat in your favor. Again, because of that range mod that I was taking, I was effectively allowed to push past that 12.8 kilometer base range on the Lushun, and extend it out to around 13 plus kilometers and effectively land my shells on target. Whereas before, I would be limited to 12.8 kilometers. And let's be honest, looking down the barrel of 16 Smolensk guns, that could be a pretty scary. Just saying. So, moving forward within the battle, talking a little bit about the battle here, we're just going to continually farm as much as we possibly can, but having to keep in mind that there is an enemy Kleber on the field still and an enemy Shimakaze. I see where the Kleber is at. Not really a big threat to me right now, as I was thinking that he was actually going to turn left. Turns out he turns right and actually targets myself. But obviously with the help of the carrier, we can go ahead and take the Kleber down. But in the meantime, I'm just going to open up on the Yamato and try to farm his superstructure, maybe set a fire or two here and there, and help out my allies to get that overmatch off the board for our battleships and cruisers. Going into my final thoughts about the Lushun, because I know this is a big portion of the video that a lot of people kind of wait for, and that's fine. I think the Lushun is a very, very strong destroyer and a very capable DD. But in my opinion, I would rather play other destroyers because I think other destroyers are going to allow a little bit more fun and a little bit more flexible play style than what the Lushun brings to the table. I think the Lushun, again, I can't stress enough, is a good ship, and should you go for? Again, it depends on the how much you're willing to spend on this ship. If you're going to spend the minimum or whatever of 67,000 doubloons, yeah, I don't see why not. Even if you want to go a couple phases, if you're not going to make it to that much, around 8,000, 9,000, yeah, okay. I would say the second you're spending more than 10, I would probably cut it. And that's just because there are tech line destroyers that you could get that are going to offer a similar playstyle and maybe even more impactful than that of the Lushun as of right now. The only thing really going for the Lushun is that it is unique because it is a pure gunboat, relatively speaking, for the Pan-Asians, whereas the Yu Yang is more of a hybrid, depending on if you have it set up with its ledge mod and the radar consumable, or if you want to play it more of a type of torpedo boat kind of thing. Obviously, for me, I'm going to play the Yu Yang more as a torpedo boat, just because I have more fun with the ship setup that way than if I'm going in with the gunboat. But that being said, the Lushun is a very capable DD hunter if you drop the smoke and you take the radar, which then could be a good pro versus con thing for you if you want to bring your radar Yu Yang commander over to Lushun and bounce them back and forth. I think the commanders could jive very well on this particular vessel and that particular vessel. I already listed out the cons of the ship, but what are the pros? I mean, obviously the AP DPM is pretty good, and the HE DPM, again, is pretty respectable. You're on a relatively stealthy hull at 5.8 kilometers. You have a 5.5 kilometer hydroacoustic search that allows you the flexibility to push enemy destroyers and do some spotting and reconnaissance for your team. And your torpedoes aren't too shabby either, going 11 kilometers, hitting, I think, just shy of 18,000 damage, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can't remember exactly if it was 18 or a little bit lower, a little bit higher, but around that range, right? She's a good boat. She's definitely a good boat, and I'm happy to see that Wargaming went ahead and reran the event, so to speak, in forms of the Lushun B. I wish they would do more kind of like this, but not necessarily running them as B variants, but actually bringing the Dockyard ships back in some way, shape, or form, so that maybe you can bank. Let's say if you only finish 27 of the 35 phases of the Lushun B Dockyard, you have 27 like build orders that you can apply to, as in a currency to exchange that for older Dockyard ships or something like that, like the Odin or the Hyazin or ships like that. I think it's kind of uncharted territory or untapped potential that they could do in order to allow people that don't necessarily have these ships to have an opportunity at getting these ships. Because I'm all about giving people the opportunity to either purchase the ships or obtain these ships in various other ways that really aren't making it too incredibly easy, because a lot of us did, invest the time and the money to get these ships, but kind of allowing that same process for newer players who weren't around for these events, right? Rather than just repackaging it and selling it to us in a B variant. But again, it is Black Friday, so I can see why they chose to do this. And then again, this Dockyard is finishing up with this, 14.10. And again, for 14.11, to finish out the year, we are going in with a new Dockyard ship that I will 100% make a video. And yes, before you comment down below, that was a mistake. I did not mean, I thought I was already completely slowed down. I guess I was still going at least half speed. So yes, that was a mistake on my end. Did not need to soak 2 Nakamov torpedoes. So. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much my final thoughts on the Lushun. I have fun with her. She's a good ship. Again, it all depends on how much you're willing to spend on her. But for me, I wouldn't go anywhere over 10K, just flat out. I would save your doubloons for something else that might, appeal to you, such as Santa crates down the road or whatnot. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and, promote gambling in the game, but I just think you could probably have, get something else, plus with that coupon in the armory for doubloons, you could probably get something else that might be a little bit more intriguing to you. Again, this is a special ship. This isn't going to yield you any improved income, so we also keep that in mind as well. I think tier 9 is kind of the tier you want to do in regards of getting that that credit income via how much it's costing you to resupply after the battle. So here's the post-battle analysis of the game. Again, pretty standard game, 153,000 damage, 3 kills. Again, this is nothing special. This is just your standard ordinary game that you can obtain if you get a little bit proficient in this ship. Again, people are going to yield far better results than what I do, but hey, this is the one game I had, and I wanted to showcase it for y'all. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in to the review, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.